I just want to talk really briefly about the kind of class structure and how we're doing things. The way that we did things today is pretty much how we're going to do the whole semester. You show up with a bunch of stuff, we give you gut reactions, you will ultimately decide what's good and what you're going to move forward with. If you need more help, I'm going to give it to you, but in general, like, I think the most specific thing I said today was, oh, maybe research this, but then still do another thing. That's like about as specific as it's gonna get. Like, that can be a weird way of working if you're used to either putting all your energy into one thing, and because you've put all your energy into it, you tend to believe in it, or you're used to the class and the teacher through critique being like, oh, you should do this. And then we're not doing that. So the thing I want to address is, if this is anxiety inducing, how to kind of reframe what you're doing so that you can deal with it. Because we're not going to make it go away by virtue of me then being like, okay, cool, I'll pick for you. Two things to think about. The first, one of the ways that you're going to get confidence in the output of the stuff that you're making is by the amount of focus that you're putting into it as you're doing it. So when you're working, be engaged, which sounds like a really stupid thing to say, but what I mean is, since no one's ever gonna let you off the hook, it's not like you're gonna make a bunch of stuff and then the class is gonna decide for you what's good. It's really important that you be very kind of present during the making of the stuff, because that kind of residual buildup is what gives you the confidence in the end results. Like, that's how you earn confidence in the output, is by being attentive and dedicated during the making, whether that's research, designing, whatever part of the process. This is really important if you get to a point where, like, I don't know, sometimes you don't love everything. Like, you just didn't get to the point where you're in love with the thing, but you have to work through it in order to finish the thing. Sometimes it just doesn't come together. It's in those instances where the process and being engaged with the process matters, because you know that at every step of the way, you did the best that you could, and it's not clicking emotionally the way that you want it to. And sometimes that happens, and it's not a big deal. You don't beat yourself up about it. You don't wonder why you suck. You just accept, like, every time I worked on this, I did what I thought was right. And for some reason, at the end of this, I'm not in love with it. That's fine. It's still good. I just happen not to be excited by it. It just seems like a weird dichotomy, but I think it's a really helpful thing, because it gets you off of this constantly needing to be in love with every single thing that you make. Like, you just don't need to even aesthetically like everything that you make. And one of the ways you get there is by really owning the process and just really saying, like, here, 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 and here, I did what I thought was right. And I gave it everything I had. Sometimes it doesn't work out. The other thing to think about, though, is, are you also unnecessarily beating yourself up because you're constantly comparing your work to other stuff? And all I can really say is, stop. It's easier said than done. I'm well aware of it. Force yourself to start liking your work if you struggle with really looking at your stuff and being like, this is fucking awesome. And a lot of times, it's not that the stuff that you make isn't good. It's not even that you don't like it. It's you don't want to admit that you like the stuff that you make and that you like it better than all that other crap in the world. It is okay to think that your work is awesome. It will not stop you from getting better. I was gonna say it doesn't make you an egomaniac. It does make you an egomaniac, and that is a good thing, because most people are so insecure that it doesn't matter how much of an egomaniac you get, you will never reach Kanye levels. You'll still be a pretty reasonable human being. Like, me at my most egomaniacal is probably still like just me being a normal, like, well-adjusted adult. Really think about that if you struggle with it, and like, just force yourself to start liking your stuff and lower your threshold for what's good, which sounds really dumb, but just do it. Treat it like someone else made it. Like when your friends make stuff, you don't immediately attack it and critique it, right? Like you almost always notice what's awesome about it. Start noticing what's awesome about your own stuff. And then as far as the process thing, it's individual to everyone. But I would say one of the really big things is that if you have doubt during the process, that might be a sign that you're doing something wrong. So if you feel like you're too indebted to your influences and that's causing doubt, that's not necessarily a sign like, oh, you're insecure. That might be a sign of like your internal system telling you you're looking at too much other stuff and you're not pulling enough of it out of you. Or if you feel like you're tweaking stuff to death, well, that is probably a good sign that you're tweaking stuff to death. And what you need to do is make a new version, because you need to be working and you need to be busy, but you have to find a way to channel it productively. But it's really individual for everybody, but just really start to notice, are you engaged? Are you excited as you're working? Notice what stuff works for you, what stuff doesn't. Like even though we're gonna do a set process, I want you to be paying attention to what feels right and what feels productive. And then when you get to the end of the line, just acknowledge you made every single move, like the right move to the best of your ability. You didn't cut corners. You didn't let sloppy mistakes slide. You didn't maybe take the easy way out of just finding something that looks dope and be like, oh, I'll just make a version of that. You know what I mean? Like, even if you failed miserably, like you failed miserably on your own terms, trying to make the best work that you can, that will give you a lot of confidence for when you start to get into the weeds and you honestly don't know whether something is good. And then you kind of switch it up and you say like, oh, it's good because the process is good. And in the future, I need to figure out how to manipulate that process more so that the end results are something I'm a little bit more happy with. And we'll share like one little anecdote about like what it took for my head to flip on this switch, because I used to compare my work to everybody's work everywhere all the time, and I felt super bad all the time. But there's a band called Self Defense Family. They used to be a normal band that gets together, they practice, they write songs, they work those songs to death, and they record the songs. Eventually they became a band that when it's time to make an album, they send out a text and say, we have studio time in January, who's working on the album? And whoever can get to Boston or New York or LA or wherever they're gonna record says, oh, I'm gonna work on the album. And then they write and record a song a day. And that's how they make an album. So a 10-song record takes 10 days for them. And their entire approach is, if we're committed to the process and fully engaged, then the output is good. Even if 3 months later, when the record is mastered, someone like the guitarist listens to it and is like, oof, I do not like this record. He doesn't say like the record sucks. He just says like, oh, I don't like the record. It's a good record, just aesthetically, I don't ever want to listen to it. To me, that was like a really big switch to say like, you can't really control the output, but you can control the process. And that if you trust your process, then even when your output gets weird, you're like, whatever. I was super happy making this, therefore the output is good. You can go too far off the edge with that, but I think most of us judge what we do so harshly and so contextually that learning to instead look at the A through Y that leads to the Z, looking at what you're doing there, that will affect the output more than anything else. So that's just some stuff to think about. Like if you wrestle with the sort of insecurity, especially when you're gonna come up here and like, when you show design concepts, I want to see 3 things or 5 things or however many that you're in love with equally. But then I'm gonna put you in the shitty position of you have to be the one to decide which one goes forward. They can't all go forward. And at that point, like you don't have room for doubt. You have to be able to make some kind of decision, even if it's flip a coin and just run with whatever happens. It takes a lot of confidence to do that, and that's the thing that you have to build up. You're not gonna wake up one day and just suddenly be confident. You won't work for a certain amount of time and suddenly have like boatloads of confidence. It's gonna come from deciding that it's important and then working in a way to where it naturally starts to build up in you. Because lots of creative people work for 40 years and never get an ounce of confidence. They're still as insecure as when they were in art school or the first time they picked up a guitar or whatever. And the people that tend to be confident, yeah, some of them are just like born with like boatloads of confidence, but other people, it's like you make a decision that you're gonna be confident, and then once you do that, you start to manipulate what you're doing so that you earn it.